I never thought much about it at first. I assumed it was all pretend, just a game, something temporary that wouldn't matter. But looking back now, I realize that the line between pretend and reality had been blurred for me long before I even understood it. It started in the smallest, quietest moments I didn't even notice at the time. I was a kid, maybe 10 or 11, and I found myself sneaking into my older sister's room while she was at school. Her closet fascinated me. It wasn't just the clothes, it was the way she moved, the confidence in her laughter, the way the light hit her hair in the afternoon. I tried on a dress once, carefully, almost reverently, making sure she wouldn't notice. And when I looked in the mirror, I froze. It was just a dress, just fabric, just a pretend game, but my reflection felt alive. Not just me pretending, but something I couldn't name yet, something that made my chest tighten in a strange, unfamiliar way. I ran out before she could see, heart pounding, and told myself it was nothing, that it was silly. Pretend. That was my mantra for years. Pretend. 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 High school was no easier. The teasing alone could have crushed anyone, and I buried that part of myself deeper with each passing day. I learned to laugh at the jokes about boys who liked girly things, about anyone who stepped outside the box. I played sports, hung out with the right crowd, and nodded along to conversations that never included me. But inside, the urge didn't vanish. It simmered quietly, like a hidden ember I kept hidden from everyone, even myself. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night, imagining what it would feel like to really be seen as the person I sometimes felt I was inside. I'd try things in secret, clothes, makeup, even practicing my voice. Each time I looked in the mirror, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I told myself it was a phase, a fantasy, and yet I never stopped. Then came college. That's when everything changed. College is a place where anonymity allows for exploration, and for the first time, I met people who didn't judge. I stumbled into a small community online, people like me, sharing experiences, struggles, and transformations. It felt like stepping into a mirror of myself, a mirror that confirmed I wasn't alone, that what I'd always felt wasn't a trick of my imagination. One night, I decided to try it fully. Not just at home, not just in secret, but outside, in public, at a gathering where no one knew me. I wore a carefully chosen outfit, something elegant but not flashy, and as I looked in the mirror before leaving, I felt my stomach twist with equal parts terror and excitement. I walked into the cafe, heart hammering, and for the first time, I felt like I was showing the world my real self. And the world, it didn't shatter. People smiled, nodded, didn't look at me any differently than anyone else. That moment was liberating, but also terrifying. I knew I couldn't go back to pretending forever. But life has a way of testing courage. My family, the people who had shaped me, loved me, but they were steeped in expectations, in ideas of who I was supposed to be. Coming out to them, showing them this side of myself, seemed impossible. I tried to hide it, to manage it, to compartmentalize. Yet every time I dressed, every time I looked in the mirror, every time I felt the weight of my own truth, it became more impossible to pretend. Then one day, in a quiet, almost casual moment, the past confronted me. I found an old box of family photos, and in it, pictures of me as a toddler. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, just a kid like any other. But then I noticed a pattern. There I was, at birthday parties, dressed in what were supposed to be girls' outfits chosen by relatives or friends. There I was, smiling in dresses, in skirts, in ribbons in my hair, perfectly comfortable, perfectly natural. It wasn't pretend. It wasn't a phase. It was me, all along. I couldn't deny it anymore. The proof was in my own past, in images I had hidden away or forgotten. The truth I'd feared was not only real, it had been real since the very beginning. After that discovery, everything shifted. I started exploring more openly, testing boundaries, learning to express myself fully. The first time I went out with a subtle change, a skirt, a blouse, a small touch of makeup, I felt the old thrill, the old terror, but also something deeper, affirmation. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't broken. I was simply myself, finally stepping out of the shadows. It wasn't easy. There were stares, whispers, moments where doubt crept in. But each day I practiced courage, each day I allowed myself to exist fully, I grew stronger. I realized that transformation wasn't just about clothes or appearances. It was about identity, about reconciling who I had always been with who the world expected me to be. Then came a moment I will never forget. I was walking through a crowded park, wearing an outfit that felt entirely right, entirely me, and a stranger smiled at me, genuinely, warmly. Something in their gaze was accepting without question, without judgment. I felt a surge of emotion so intense it brought tears to my eyes. It wasn't just acceptance from others, it was acceptance of myself, fully, finally, without compromise. I remembered every moment of hiding, every whispered fear, every night of secret practice in my bedroom mirror, and I understood that this journey had been waiting for me my whole life. It wasn't just about identity, though. It was about courage and truth, about letting myself live authentically. I started journaling, documenting my experiences, the highs and the lows. Each entry reminded me of how far I'd come, how strong I had become, and how much more I wanted to explore. I experimented with fashion, with hair, with voice. I met others who shared similar journeys, and each story, each shared struggle, reinforced my own. Every step forward became a lesson in bravery, a lesson in patience, a lesson in loving myself. The hardest part, surprisingly, wasn't the world, it was me. I had spent so long denying myself that learning to fully embrace my identity took time, self-compassion, and relentless reflection. I learned to look in the mirror without judgment, to celebrate each small victory, each courageous step. I learned that transformation isn't a single moment, it's a lifetime of discovery, a series of choices that affirm who you are, not who others expect you to be. And then, finally, I confronted my family. I didn't do it all at once. I started with small hints, casual mentions, moments of casual confidence. Their reactions were mixed, confusion, worry, surprise, but I held steady. I showed them who I was, without fear, without apology. And slowly, gradually, they began to see me, truly see me. They asked questions, made mistakes, stumbled through their own understanding, but the love remained. And love, as I realized, is resilient. It adapts. It can stretch to embrace truths it didn't anticipate, truths it may have feared at first. Now, I look back and I understand that everything, every secret, every fear, every small act of pretending was preparing me for this moment. I thought it was pretend for so long, that exploring, experimenting, hiding, was just a game. But the past, my own history, confirmed the truth. I wasn't pretending. I was discovering. I was uncovering layers of myself that had always existed, waiting patiently for me to notice. And in noticing, I finally became whole. The journey isn't over. Transformation never truly ends. Every day brings new lessons, new discoveries, new moments of courage. But I no longer fear the mirror, no longer fear the world, no longer fear myself. I understand now that being true to who I am isn't a choice, it's a necessity. And in that truth, in that acceptance, I have found freedom, peace, and an unshakable sense of self. And so, I tell my story not because it's unique, but because it's human. Because there are countless others out there who feel the same hidden urges, the same quiet longing, the same fear that it's all pretend. It's not pretend. The proof is in your past, in your own reflection, in every moment that has brought you to this point. Trust it. Embrace it. And step into the light of who you truly are. Because that light, once acknowledged, will never fade. It will guide you, strengthen you, and remind you that your story, your real, authentic story, is worth living, worth loving, and worth celebrating every single day. Even as I embraced my identity more fully, life had a way of throwing challenges that tested everything I had built. One day, I received an unexpected message from an old friend, someone who had known me long before I started exploring this side of myself. At first, I hesitated. Should I even respond? Would they accept me, or would it all come crashing down? But curiosity, and a small flicker of hope, pushed me to open the message. They wrote about memories, childhood moments, family gatherings, holidays, and then, in a way that caught me completely off guard, they mentioned noticing something different about me even back then. They had remembered the dresses I had played with as a kid, the times I had quietly mimicked my sister, the shy experiments no one else had seen. They hadn't judged me, hadn't laughed, hadn't told anyone. And suddenly, I felt seen, really seen, by someone outside my own reflection. That validation, unexpected and gentle, hit me harder than I could have imagined. It was around this time that I began to document my transformation more seriously. I started taking photos of myself in different outfits, different styles, experimenting with colors, textures, and silhouettes. At first, I kept them private, a personal diary in visual form. But then, slowly, the idea of sharing my journey with a wider audience began to form. Not for attention, not for approval, but as a way to affirm my own experiences and perhaps connect with others who felt trapped in the same confusing, isolating cycle I had endured. Each time I posted a picture, each time I shared a story, a little piece of the fear that had always lingered began to fall away. People responded not with judgment, but with curiosity, support, and sometimes gratitude. They told me my courage had inspired them to explore their own identities, to take small steps toward authenticity. And I realized something important: my story wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who had ever felt forced to pretend, forced to hide, forced to deny their own truth. But transformation, as liberating as it was, also had its quiet, painful moments. I couldn't escape the whispers of doubt that occasionally crept in. Would I ever be fully accepted? Would the past always have the power to haunt me, to remind me of all the years I had spent hiding? One evening, I found myself back in my childhood home, alone in my sister's old room, surrounded by the very clothes that had first sparked this journey. I picked up a dress I had worn once as a child, the fabric soft and familiar. I held it close, and for the first time, I let myself cry, not out of shame, not out of fear, but out of release. All the years of pretending, of hiding, of fearing that my desires were somehow wrong, poured out in that moment. And then, slowly, a sense of peace began to settle in. I realized that the past, as much as it had shaped me, didn't have to define my future. I could honor it, learn from it, and then move forward without letting it weigh me down. As I continued to embrace myself fully, I began encountering situations that tested my courage in unexpected ways. Social gatherings, work events, family dinners, moments where I had to navigate the tension between authenticity and societal expectation. And yet, each time I chose to show up as myself, to speak my truth, to live openly in the way I had longed to, I felt a surge of strength I hadn't known existed. I learned to navigate rejection gracefully, to let go of the opinions of those who could not understand, and to cherish the support of those who did. There was a kind of quiet joy in this process, a steady rhythm of bravery and vulnerability, each reinforcing the other. One of the most profound moments came unexpectedly. I was invited to a family reunion, an event I had once dreaded, knowing it would mean facing relatives who might not accept the full version of me. I decided, carefully, to attend as myself, in a way that was comfortable yet unmistakably authentic. The first few hours were tense, polite smiles masking the curiosity and confusion that lingered beneath the surface. But gradually, as conversations unfolded, as laughter returned, as memories were shared, something remarkable happened. My presence, fully honest and unapologetic, began to change the dynamic. People relaxed. They asked questions. They expressed concern, interest, even admiration for my courage. By the end of the evening, I felt a warmth I had never anticipated, a sense of belonging, not because I had hidden, conformed, or played a role, but because I had allowed myself to be real. It was a turning point, a moment that confirmed that transformation isn't just internal. It ripples outward, affecting the people around you, challenging them to expand their understanding, and sometimes, to grow alongside you. Even as acceptance from others grew, the internal journey continued. I had to confront the subtle insecurities, the lingering doubts, the fear that old habits of hiding might return. I created rituals to reinforce my self-acceptance, journaling, mindfulness, celebrating small victories, acknowledging every step of progress. I discovered that transformation is not a single destination, it is an ongoing process, a continuous act of courage, reflection, and choice. Some days were harder than others. Some days, the old shadows of shame crept in unexpectedly, triggered by a glance, a comment, a memory. And yet, each time I faced them, each time I allowed myself to acknowledge those fears without being consumed by them, I grew stronger, more grounded, more certain of who I was. Through it all, I realized that identity, authenticity, and courage are intertwined. To deny one is to weaken the others. I had spent so many years pretending, believing that what I felt was trivial or wrong, that my own reflection was a lie. But in truth, every step of the journey, every act of self-discovery, every quiet moment of reflection had led me to the realization that authenticity is not optional. It is essential. And when I embraced it fully, without compromise, without fear, the world around me began to shift as well. Looking back, I see now that the moments I thought were pretend were never pretend at all. They were the first sparks of a truth that had always been inside me, waiting patiently for the courage to emerge. I understand now that transformation is not about who you are on the outside, but about aligning your inner world with the life you live. It's about letting go of fear, embracing vulnerability, and daring to be fully, unmistakably, unapologetically yourself. And so, as I continue this journey, as I navigate the challenges, joys, and discoveries that each day brings, I carry with me the knowledge that the past has confirmed me. Every dress I tried on, every moment of secret reflection, every whispered fantasy, it all points to the same truth. I am real, I am valid, I am worthy. And I will continue to live that truth, openly, boldly, and courageously, because in the end, the only way to truly honor myself is to embrace every part of who I am, without compromise, without fear, and without apology. The turning point came unexpectedly, in a way I hadn't anticipated. I was walking through the city one evening, a soft breeze brushing past me, streets alive with lights and chatter, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly untethered. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't performing. I wasn't pretending. I was just me. Every glance in the shop windows, every reflection in passing glass felt like a mirror confirming what I had always known but had spent decades trying to deny. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The past had been guiding me all along. The secret moments of childhood play, the quiet experiments in my teen years, the first courageous outings in college, they weren't mistakes, they weren't fantasies. They were breadcrumbs, leading me to the truth of myself. And now, I had finally arrived. A few days later, I made a decision that terrified me and thrilled me at the same time. I decided to go to a family gathering, not in disguise, not in careful concealment, but entirely as myself. I carefully chose an outfit that reflected who I felt I was, something elegant yet comfortable, a style I had always loved but had too often hidden behind layers of fear. The morning of the gathering, I stood in front of the mirror for what felt like hours, taking deep breaths, steadying the tremor in my chest, whispering quietly to myself that I was allowed to exist, fully, without apology. And then I stepped out. The first moments were tense, as expected. There were curious looks, hesitant smiles, and a flurry of unspoken questions hanging in the air. But instead of retreating, instead of shrinking into the shadows, I walked in with confidence I hadn't felt in years. I greeted my family warmly, spoke openly, laughed genuinely, and slowly, like a tide that had been held back too long, acceptance began to flow in. There were questions awkward, sometimes blunt, but I answered them honestly, gently, without defensiveness. And something remarkable happened. The more I shared, the more I existed without fear, the more the tension eased. By the end of the evening, the room felt lighter. The smiles were warmer. The connections felt real. I realized then that courage doesn't just change you, it changes the world around you, too. That night, walking home, I felt a sense of peace I had never known. I thought about every year of pretending, every fear, every secret hiding place. And I understood that none of it had been wasted. Each moment, each struggle, had led me here, to this clarity, this acceptance, this freedom. The past had confirmed me, yes, but more than that, it had prepared me. It had given me the strength to embrace myself fully, without compromise, without apology. From that day forward, I lived differently. I didn't hide parts of myself anymore, even in the small, ordinary moments of life. I experimented with fashion, with expression, with presence, in ways that felt joyful, creative, and liberating. I continued to meet new people, form new connections, and every interaction carried the quiet strength of someone who no longer feared judgment. I began sharing my story more publicly, not for validation, but in the hope that it might reach someone who had spent years believing their own feelings were invalid, who had been whispering to themselves that they were pretending. I wanted them to know the truth I had finally discovered, that it's not pretend. It's real. It's valid. It's powerful. I still have moments of doubt, yes. I still encounter people who don't understand, who can't see beyond their own expectations. But those moments no longer define me. I've built resilience from years of hidden longing, from secret courage, from the quiet affirmations I gave myself in the mirror, night after night, until I could no longer deny who I was. I have learned to love that reflection, to celebrate it, to let it guide me. Transformation, I now understand, is not about becoming someone else, it's about uncovering the person you have always been, beneath layers of fear, expectation, and societal pressure. And so, I tell my story because it matters, because it's a story that is far too often hidden, dismissed as fantasy. I thought it was pretend for so long, and maybe I even wanted to believe it. Pretending felt safe. Pretending kept me small, invisible, protected. But the past, in all its quiet confirmation, reminded me that the truth cannot be ignored forever. It waits patiently, like a flame under the snow, ready to ignite when courage finally finds it. Now, I live openly, authentically, without apology. I honor the child I once was, the teenager who hid in closets and mirrors, the adult who hesitated at the threshold of courage. I honor every step that led me here, every tear shed in secret, every smile I practiced alone in my room. I honor myself because I finally understand, transformation is not about pretending. It is about awakening, embracing, and walking fully in the light of your own truth. And in that awakening, I discovered something more than freedom, I discovered joy. Not the fleeting happiness of approval, not the temporary thrill of being seen, but the deep, unshakable joy of knowing, finally, that I am exactly who I am meant to be. And the past, once a source of confusion and fear, now stands as proof. Proof that my journey was real. Proof that my identity is valid. Proof that the life I have dared to claim as my own is worth every moment of courage, every risk, every quiet whisper to myself that someday, somehow, it would all be okay. The story isn't over, it never truly is, but I no longer fear what comes next. Each day is another step, another choice, another affirmation of self. I am no longer pretending. I am living. I am whole. And every time I see my reflection, every time I remember the hidden moments of my past, I smile. Because at last, finally, I am free.